Well, Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. And this is Barbara serving as your host today. And Brother Pete is here as your co-host.
I'm glad you were able to join us for this. Awesome.
Well, Brother Pete, our title today is, Did David Eat the Shewbread on the Sabbath? Was it the Sabbath? David ate the shewbread on the fourth morning after the new moon day. Was this a seventh-day Sabbath on our Gregorian calendar? If it is a seventh-day Sabbath, it serves as evidence against the lunar Sabbath, suggesting instead a fixed Sabbath day invariably linked to the seventh day of the continuous weekly cycle of the modern Roman calendar. If the Sabbath indeed falls on the fourth day after the new moon on this occasion, it undermines the lunar Sabbath model, which dictates Sabbath observance to fall upon the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th day as counted from the new moon day on every month of the year. Did David's encounter with the shewbread demonstrate that his actions transpired on the Sabbath day itself, as evidenced by receiving of the shewbread on that day? The 12 loaves of shewbread were designated for the priestly order, and 5 of them were given to David and his men. Okay, so this is the story of David and the shewbread, and it is also mentioned in the New Testament. The Pharisees accused the Messiah's disciples. You remember this story? They were harvesting grain in their palm of their hand and eating it, and the Pharisees accused the Messiah's disciples of transgressing the Sabbath laws of picking and eating the grain. But is their claim rooted in truth, or does it mask a deeper agenda? The story is told in Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Matthew 12, 1 through 8, Mark 2 through 23 through 28, and Luke 6, 1 through 5. We come to Mark 2, 23 through 28. And it came to pass that he went through the cornfields of the Sabbath day, and his disciples began, as they went, to pluck the ears of corn. And the Pharisees said unto him, Behold, why did they on the Sabbath day do that which is not lawful? And he said unto them, Have you never read what David did when he had need and was hungry, and they that were with him? How he went into the house of Elohim in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and did eat the shewbread, which is not lawful to eat, but for the priests, and gave also to them which were with him. And he said unto him, The Sabbath was made for man, and not the man for Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is master also of the Sabbath.
The question at large is whether the Messiah's disciples plucking and eating grain and David eating sacred shewbread occurred on the day of the Holy Sabbath. Are both stories about doing that which is unlawful to do? Are both stories about doing that which is unlawful to do concerning eating? In the Messiah's answer to the Pharisees, as recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, does he state that David ate the shewbread on the Sabbath day? Are there any extenuating details that identify that David ate the shewbread on the Sabbath day, a Saturday of a continuous weekly cycle, on this fourth day after fleeing for his life from King Saul, as recorded in 1 Samuel 21? Yeshua's response to the accusation of breaking the Sabbath. The Messiah references David's actions, drawing 3 parallels to the Sabbath. Despite providing some nuance to the fourth commandment and Torah law regarding Sabbath observance, he notably refrains from suggesting that David partook of the shewbread from the tabernacle on the Sabbath day. Yeshua gave the following examples to the Pharisees.
We find that the Messiah responded to the Pharisees' interrogation by presenting 3 examples of perceived lawbreaking in the Old Testament and a 4th response to the purpose of the Sabbath. 1. Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, as well as those who were with him? Nothing is said here about David breaking the Sabbath commandment, only that he did what was not lawful to do. 2. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Note, this is the Messiah's first comment designed to compare with the Pharisees' accusation about the disciples breaking the Sabbath commandment, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with David and the showbread. 3. But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what it means, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is master even of the Sabbath day. Note, this commandment has nothing to do with David and the showbread, but rather identifies himself as the master of having dominion over the Sabbath. And 4. And from Mark 2:27, the Messiah lays out the principle that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. In these 4 examples, Yeshua shows the value of the Sabbath as a gift bestowed upon humanity, designed for their well-being and spiritual nourishment. Far from abolishing its significance, the Messiah's words reaffirm the Sabbath's eternal relevance, emphasizing its centrality in the divine order, that as long as mankind exists, the gift of the sacred Sabbath will play a part.
The second Sabbath from the first. And here it talks about that in Luke 6:1-5.
And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first, that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto them, Why do you do that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath? And Yeshua answered them, said, Have you not read so much as this, what David did when himself was hungry, and they which were with him, how he went into the house of Elohim, and did take and eat the showbread, and gave also to them that were with him, which is not lawful to eat, but for the priests alone. And he said unto them, that the Son of Man is master also of the Sabbath.
So Luke 6:1, and it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first that he. Well, what could this cryptic phrase signify? Does it allude to the second Sabbath after the year's commencement, or perhaps the second Sabbath of the month's onset? Delving deeper, we uncover a truth obscured by the complexities of modern Roman timekeeping. The second Sabbath from the first. In dissecting the phrase second Sabbath after the first, we encounter a conundrum that defies conventional calendars. Unlike the modern Gregorian calendar, where Sabbaths hold no fixed correlation with specific monthly dates, this terminology implies a sequential count from a definitive starting point. It beckons us to reckon time in a manner unfamiliar to the modern Roman solar-only calendar. The months on a Gregorian calendar do not start with a new moon day. The Gregorian Roman continuous weekly cycle is entirely divorced from the moon. The second Sabbath from the first signifies a reference to the cyclical rhythm of the lunar calendar, where seventh-day Sabbaths and annual feast days find their bearings in the ebb and flow of particular lunar phases at the specific interval of the 15th of the lunar month. Thus, the second Sabbath after the first refers back to the commencement of the lunar month, New Moon Day, the first day of a biblical lunar month, rather than arbitrary markers of the secular Roman timekeeping system. The biblical story of David eating the showbread. 1 Samuel 21-42. The background story of David's flight from King Saul unfolds with gripping intensity as depicted in 1 Samuel 20. David is convicted that Saul seeks his demise, driving him to seek refuge from the king's wrath. Jonathan, Saul's son, pledges his allegiance to David, urging him to hide in the safety of the fields for 2 nights. Together, David and Jonathan concord a daring plan to gauge Saul's intentions, with Jonathan vowing to relay any imminent danger to his friend. As the narrative unfolds, the stage is set for a pivotal confrontation between David and Saul during the new moon celebration meal, a symbolic gathering marking the lunar cycle. David fails to attend the first night of the new moon feast. Saul dismisses his absence, anticipating his presence on the following night at the second celebration feast. The 2 feasts act as bookends to highlight the single new moon event. The first meal announces the start of the new month to commence at sunrise, and the second meal announces the sacred portion of the new moon day. Saul's fury ignites as he accuses Jonathan of treason, viewing David as a threat to his reign and Jonathan's own aspirations to the throne. So here it is in Scripture.
1 Samuel 20:5. David said to Jonathan, "Indeed, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king to eat. But let me go, that I may hide in the field until the 3rd day at evening." Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed, because your seat will be empty. And when you have stayed 3 days, go down quickly and come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and remain by the stone of ZELLE. Then I will shoot 3 hours to the side, as though I shot at a target. And there I will send a lad, saying, 'Go find the arrows.' And if I expressly say to the lad, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, get them and come,' then as Yahweh lives, there is safety for you and no harm. But if I say thus to the young man, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you, go your way, for Yahweh has sent you away.'"
David and the 5 loaves of shewbread. 1 Samuel 2:21, 1-6.
Now David came to Nob, and Abimelech the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid when he met David, and said to him, "Why are you alone and no one with you?" And so David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king has ordered me on some business, and said to me, 'Do not let anyone know anything about the business on which I send you, or what I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. Now therefore, what have you on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever you have found.' And the priest answered David and said, 'There is no common bread on hand, but there is only holy bread. And if the young men have at least kept themselves from women.' Then David answered the priest and said, 'Truly, women have been kept from us for about 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in effect common, even though it is consecrated in the vessel this day.' And so the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there but the shewbread, which had been taken from before Yahweh, in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away."
In 1 Samuel 2:21, 1-9, we find that David is fleeing for his life from the wrath of King Saul. Yet he tells Ahimelech, the priest, that he is on the king's business with a couple of servants, and that they have run out of food. In verses 1 to 2, David speaks to Ahimelech the priest at Nob. That was the current location of the tabernacle or sanctuary, which has yet to be built of stone in Jerusalem. And with him, David, are a couple of servants, all of whom are hungry because they have ran out of food. And David lies to Ahimelech about being on the king's business. Now, this idea of David passing through Nob on the king's business did not raise any eyebrows on this day. Yet, if this had been the seventh-day Sabbath, as some suggest, Ahimelech, the priest, would have said something in the chastisement of doing business and not keeping the Sabbath day sacred. Note, so far nothing has yet been said about this day being the Holy Sabbath. So in verse 3, David gives the exact number of 5 loaves he desires, or whatever is present or left over. At first glance, we may consider that he only needs 5 loaves, but then he adds whatever is present, meaning whatever there is. This illustrates David's foreknowledge of when the showbread is provided fresh in the tabernacle on the Sabbath, which gives him the ability to calculate how many loaves would most likely be present on this 5th day of the lunar month, after the priests have eaten a loaf at the time of the previous morning and evening sacrifices. So here are some facts deduced from 1 Samuel 21, 1 to 6. Every 7th-day Sabbath, there is a change of the officiating priests in the tabernacle or sanctuary, and also 12 new freshly baked loaves of showbread are brought in. Each day of the 6-day work week, 2 loaves are eaten by the officiating priest. You can find that in Matthew 12:4. And these are one at a time, one in the morning sacrifice and the other at the evening sacrifice. No loaves are eaten on either the new moon day, the transition day, the 30th day of the lunar month, or the 7th-day Sabbath. Therefore, on the first day of the week, 2 are eaten. On the second day, 2 are eaten, and so on, until all 12 loaves are eaten by the end of the 6th workday. Remember, in 1 Samuel 20, 18 through 38, David spent 2 nights, one before new moon day and one after, hiding in the field. And from these details, David arrived at the tabernacle in the morning, but after the morning sacrifice on the 5th day of the lunar month, and that would be the 4th day of the work week. And this is revealed in the fact that he had pre-calculated that only 5 loaves would be there when he arrived. For he said, "Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand," or what there is present or left over. Note, nothing has yet been said about this day being the Holy Sabbath. In verses 4 to 5, Ahimelech the priest makes it clear that he has no common bread, only the hallowed showbread, but it would only be given if David and his servants had been abstinent from women. David assured him that indeed they had been without women for 3 days. So you can see in the picture below, new moon day is day 1. Then you have your first work day, and there will be 2 loaves of bread eaten that day. The second work day, 2 more loaves, and the third work day, 2 more, and this is the 4th work day, and it would have been eaten 1 that morning. So of the 12 loaves, 7 loaves have been eaten. So that leaves exactly 5 loaves remaining. The following verse is from a Hebrew word study of 1 Samuel 21:6.
And so the priest, Ahimelech, gave him, that's David, hallowed bread, because there was no common bread there except for the bread of the presence, that is the showbread. as instructions from before the presence of Yahweh ordained fresh bread in the day it was received.
But what must be understood here is that there is no bread left after the 6th evening. 12 loaves of unleavened bread were freshly baked on the 6th day of each week and taken to the tabernacle on the 7th-day Sabbath at the time of the changing of the priest. Why? Because the priest was to eat 1 loaf at the time of each morning sacrifice and 1 at the time of each evening sacrifice during the 6 work days only. Fresh new loaves of flat bread were brought to the tabernacle every Sabbath along with a new officiating priest. Note, as of yet, nothing has been said about this day being a holy Sabbath. Bread for the tabernacle. Leviticus 24, 5 through 9.
And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it. 2/10 of an ephah shall be in each cake. You shall set them in 2 stacks, 6 in a stack, on the pure gold table before Yahweh. And you shall put pure frankincense on each stack, that it may be on the bread for the memorial, an offering made by fire to Yahweh. Every Sabbath he shall set it in order before Yahweh continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant. And it shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in the holy place, for it is most holy to him from the offerings of Yahweh, made by fire, by perpetual statute.
Flavius Josephus provides some helpful details regarding the showbread.
However, out of the common charges, baked bread without leaven of 24/10 deals of flour, for so much is spent upon this bread. 2 heaps of these were baked. They were baked the day before the Sabbath, but they were brought into the holy place on the morning of the Sabbath and set upon the holy table, 6 on a heap, and 1 loaf still standing over against the other. That from Antiquities of the Jews.
How the showbread identifies the day of the week. From 1 Samuel 21:6, we find that David had for 3 full days been fleeing from Saul, whose intent was to kill him. And this means that 3 full days have transpired since the new moon day incident of not being seated for the meals, and that acted as bookends on either side of the sacred new moon day. And this places David's arrival at the tabernacle on the morning of the 4th day of the work week, soon after the morning sacrifice, the 5th day of the lunar month. And this was a day that no one would question the authenticity of his declaration that he was on the king's errand, doing business, as he stated. This means that only 5 loaves of showbread were left. Note that while the new moon day is always day 1 of the lunar month, the first work day is day 2 of the lunar month, making the 7th-day Sabbath day 8 of the lunar month. The showbread was brought fresh into the tabernacle on the 7th-day Sabbath, which occurs every lunar month on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. Okay, now we're going to examine the evidence again. The disciples plucking and eating grain on the Sabbath, and David eating the showbread. These are our topics. Are both stories about doing that which is unlawful to do? Yes. Are both stories about doing that which is unlawful to do about eating? Yes. Are both stories about doing that which is unlawful to do on the Sabbath day? No. No, both narratives do not occur upon the Sabbath day. This is where the problem lies for those who seek to prove Saturday is a traditional Bible Sabbath found only upon a Roman continuous weekly cycle that is entirely divorced from the moon. The proponents of this unsupported view often utilize this narrative to prove that Saturday Sabbath, although not identified by name in Scripture, existed in rhythm during the life of David. But as we have illustrated, no proof for a Saturday Sabbath in name or rhythm can be found anywhere in this narrative. Considering the immense number of details provided in both stories about what the Messiah said and what David did, is there evidence that David ate the showbread on the Sabbath day? No, none, no evidence. Are there any extenuating details that indicate that David ate the showbread on the Sabbath day, a Roman Saturday according to the continuous weekly cycle, on the morning of the fourth day after the new moon day in which he fled from King Saul? No. The evidence in 1 Samuel 20 to 21 illustrates that David fled from King Saul on the day after the new moon day, placing him at the tabernacle in the middle of the lunar week. His arrival at the tabernacle occurred on a non-Sabbath day, a day on which doing business for the king is lawful. Does the narrative of David eating the showbread provide evidence against the lunar Sabbath, as many Saturday believers declare that this was the seventh-day Sabbath on our Gregorian calendar's continuous weekly cycle? No, there's no evidence for this that can be found. It is only wishful thinking by those who would rather synchronize their Sabbath on a convenient Gregorian calendar than be restored to their Creator's sacred timekeeping principles that are found in Scripture. Likewise, is there any evidence provided when counting from the new moon day that David ate the showbread in the middle of the lunar week cycle? Yes. The count of days places David at the tabernacle on the morning of the fourth work day of the lunar week cycle, but it was the fifth day of the lunar month. Add to this that David, having full knowledge of when the showbread was provided fresh on the Sabbath day, allowed him to pre-calculate how many loaves would be available for him and his servants to eat, which was exactly 5. As a nail in a sure place, 1 Samuel 21:2 reveals that David told the priest that he and his servants were on a business errand for King Saul, in which they were instructed not to tell anyone. Although an outright lie, this single fact identifies the showbread eating event as occurring on a mere work day, as it was a non-Sabbath activity. As a result, this could not be a Saturday, or its equivalent seventh-day Sabbath rhythm, as Saturday Sabbath believers of the Roman calendar continuous weekly cycle propose. If it had been the Sabbath without question, David would have been rebuked by Ahimelech the priest for doing business on a Sabbath day. As a result, that day was neither Saturday of the Roman continuous weekly cycle nor the lunar Sabbath. It was verifiably the fourth day of the lunar week and the fifth day of the lunar month. And this is what it looks like on a calendar. And this calendar on the right shows all the moon phases, beginning with the new moon as day 1 and showing you that the fifth day would be in the middle of the work week. Final thoughts. Amidst the turmoil of David's flight from King Saul's wrath, a beacon of celestial guidance emerges, a celestial clockwork that moves with the rhythm of the lunar cycle. David, along with his companions, seeks substance on the fourth morning after the new moon day, the fifth day of the lunar month. At this moment, as David partakes of the holy bread, a divine orchestration unfolds, a sympathy of celestial movements that herald the sanctity that the Sabbath of Scripture is lunar. For it is not upon the conventional Saturday Sabbath, nor its continuous weekly cycle rhythm that David finds himself at the sacred tabernacle, but rather upon the fourth work day, as counted from the new moon day, and it was also the 5th day of the lunar month. This is a revelation that shatters the illusion of fixed Roman calendar and unveils the timeless cadence of the lunar cycle. As we compare this narrative with the account of the disciples plucking grain on the second Sabbath from the first, a celestial dance emerges, a dance that spans the ages and transcends the confines of earthly timekeeping from David's day to that of the Messiah, a period of nearly 1,000 years. Here, in the convergence of these two narratives, we witness the handiwork of the divine, a testament to the sacredness of lunar timekeeping and the restoration of Yah's divine order, as both are decidedly linked in time to the same lunar timepiece. Indeed, this revelation serves as a call to Yah's end-time believers to awaken from their slumber and embrace the divine truths of the Creator's calendar of days and years that pulse from the heart of creation as described in Genesis 1:14. It is a call to cast aside the shackles of false religious doctrines, traditions, and commandments of men, and embrace the preordained path of righteousness by recognizing New Moon Day as the beginning of the month on the Creator's calendar. In Titus 1:14, it says, not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men that turn from the truth. New Moon Day is recorded 349 times in Scripture. In Isaiah 66:23 states that we will be keeping new moon days and Sabbath days in the kingdom as we come to worship before Yah.
From new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, declares Yahweh.
To access more information about the Creator's calendar that is in the heavens, the calendar of Israel, the calendar that David kept, the calendar that Yeshua kept, please go to our website, LunarSabbathDay.com. And thank you for being here today.